Hey guys, today we're going to talk about how to pack when you're moving to the UK. Now, moving to a foreign country is very stressful, and packing to move to a foreign country is very stressful, but don't panic. I have done it and you can too. Now, for most situations, what's going to be the most beneficial is to pack whatever you can fit in your suitcase and forget the rest. Now, if you are moving to the UK because you are going to university, or you're moving to the UK perhaps on the Youth Mobility Scheme visa, so you might be in the UK for 2 years, there is no point in terms of like bringing furniture or bringing like household items. There's really no point. It's just going to be way too expensive. Pack what can fit in your suitcase and forget the rest. Now, the only situation in which this motto probably won't fit is if you are moving to the UK with your entire family. So maybe you're moving with your spouse, maybe you got a couple of kids, maybe you have a pet, and you are all relocating to the UK. That is quite a big jump. That's quite a big move, and you probably have quite a lot of furniture. So if you are in that situation, it may be beneficial to look at some type of moving company or shipping company. If you have a full house full of furniture and you are interested in bringing that to the UK. But otherwise, and in like 90% of the situations, pack what fits in your suitcase and forget the rest. Now, another important tip is to check with your particular airline before you travel. So every airline is going to be a little bit different, and they are also going to differ in terms of their baggage allowance or the size of checked bag that you are allowed. So before you get too ahead of yourself, figure out which airline you are going to use when moving to the UK. When flying to the UK for the first time, check the airline and check their baggage restrictions. So for me personally, I flew to the UK with Air Transat from Toronto to London. Great airline, by the way. Like, if you are Canadian and you're gonna move over, I haven't really had any problems with Air Transat. But what I found is that it worked out a bit better for me to upgrade my ticket. So I would get a included checked bag, and then I paid for a second checked bag. All airlines are different, and you're really gonna need to check with the one that you are going to fly with, but that worked out well for me. I also made sure that my 2 checked suitcases, so one included with my ticket and the one that I paid for extra, I made sure that they were the largest size available, at least the largest size that Air Transat would accept. If your suitcase is too big or too heavy, you are going to end up paying a ton in baggage fees. So if at all possible, it's best to avoid it. So in addition to my included checked bag, that was the largest and as heavy as I was allowed, I also had the second bag that I paid for, again, as large as they will take it and as heavy as they will take it. I also made sure to have a personal item and a carry-on with me in the cabin. Again, airlines will be different, so please check. But with Air Transat, I was allowed a rolly carry-on, the typical rolly little mini suitcase, and I was allowed a personal item, which I ended up using a backpack, again, as large as they will let me have. And I filled everything to the max weight, but you have to be very careful not to be too heavy. Now, my next big tip is to practice packing. I know this seems really silly, but honestly, it works. So I took my 2 giant checked bags, I laid them out on the ground, and I packed them. And then when they were full, I would weigh them. Then I would realize that they were too heavy. You take a couple of things out, you reweigh, you start to sort of move things around, and you get to a point where your suitcases are full. They are within the weight dimensions, the weight allowance, and you have all of your most important stuff packed. But honestly, the best way to do this is just by practicing. So I probably did this maybe 4 or 5 times, and as you start to get a feel for how much can fit and how heavy it needs to be, you start to get really specific about what to take out and what you actually don't need to pack. Because I know for me, I was sitting there on the floor with my 2 giant suitcases, and I'm like packing stuff that I haven't worn in like 4 years, or there's like that dress that you really like but you never wear, and I'm like trying to fit it in the suitcase. when you start practice packing, you realize what is important and what is not. So practice packing a couple of times, and by the end of it, you will be left with the most important stuff within suitcases that are not too heavy and just the right size. Now, the next question that I get a lot is, what should I pack? What should be included in my suitcase? And this is a tough question, but this is how I look at it. The way I look at it is, what are the most important things I need to survive? But also, what are my most expensive items? As you will find here in the UK, it is very easy to replace stuff. So if you aren't able to bring certain items, you can typically find them here in the UK. Of course, some items will be cheaper than others. So I start with the most important and my most expensive. So those are things, of course, like your tech. So my laptop, my camera, my phone. I also bring chargers for all of them. Those are easy enough to buy in the UK, and like cords and stuff are easy enough to buy here. But it is very helpful to have that right from the beginning so you don't end up with a dead laptop or a dead phone. I also look at things like a nice pair of winter boots or a decent winter coat. Of course, clothing can be replaced here in the UK, but those sorts of items tend to be pretty expensive. When thinking about clothes, don't forget that the UK has 4 seasons, and if you are going to be here for at least a year, you are going to experience all of them. So don't just pack items for the season that you are currently in. Make sure to pack things for a variety of seasons. So don't forget, a bathing suit or winter clothes. You're gonna see all of the seasons. I would also recommend to have a couple of toiletries to get you started. Again, you can buy this stuff in the UK, but you don't really want to be running out to the supermarket or to the pharmacy to get toiletries right at the beginning. So some toothpaste, shampoo, conditioner, all that kind of stuff. Make sure to have just a little bit to get you going. I wouldn't bring a ton. Like maybe you have a moisturizer that you really love and you want to bring 10 bottles. That is going to really add to your suitcase weight. So that might be something that you want to part ways with. But definitely have some to get you started so it's one less thing to worry about when you first get here. Another really big thing is prescriptions. So you can get a doctor in the UK, and I do have a video on how to do that, but I would 100% recommend going to your doctor in your home country, tell them that you are moving to the UK, and they should be able to give you a substantial amount of your prescriptions to get you started. That way, again, when you land in the UK, running around to get a doctor is not at the top of your priority list. That is something that you can deal with in a couple of weeks or even a couple of months, as long as you have a large enough refill of your prescription. Now, another thing is household stuff. So again, if you are moving to the UK on your own, whether for uni, whether for a visa, whether you are sponsored to do a job, typically I would say forget the houseware, homeware type stuff. If you are moving to a place like London, perhaps you are even going to rent a room in London, it's going to be furnished. 9 out of 10 times it's going to be furnished, and to carry around a bunch of furniture with you is just expensive and it's going to be really stressful. So 9 times out of 10, I would say forget the housewares, forget the home stuff, forget the furniture. And if you are going to be in the UK, you can build that stuff up over time. Or if you're here short term, you may end up in a furnished property, in which case you don't need it anyway. The only situation in which this would be different, like I mentioned, is if you are moving to the UK with your entire family and perhaps you are buying a house or you're going to be moving into a unfurnished house or property, then you may look at bringing what furniture you have over to the UK. But again, that is extremely expensive. When I moved to the UK, I came with absolutely no furniture, no housewares, none of that stuff. I had my 2 big suitcases, I had my backpack, and I had my roller carry-on, and that was it. Over time, of course, I've built up furniture. IKEA is a wonderful place. There's also lots of charity shops where you can pick up furniture secondhand, or there's lots of like Facebook groups in local towns and villages where people will post things that they are selling or even things that they are giving away. So if you do come to the UK without a single piece of furniture to your name, don't worry. I've been there, done that, but it is possible to build that stuff up over time. And in the long run, it will be a lot cheaper typically to just buy that stuff here when you need it. Now, another thing that I would recommend is the next time you go home, you can actually kind of stock up on what you couldn't bring the first time. So what I did was I moved to the UK with all the stuff that would fit in my suitcases. And then the next time I went back home for a visit, I think maybe 6 months later, I went back home with a very empty suitcase, just enough stuff to get me by. But what I ended up doing was filling that suitcase with the stuff that I couldn't fit the first time around and then bringing that back to the UK with me. So these are things that are a bit less important, but I still really wanted them. Or I know there was a lot of clothes that were like off season. So I didn't need them immediately in the UK, but I was going to start needing those types of clothes soon. So go back to Canada with a nearly empty suitcase, fill it on up, and then bring it back to the UK with me. As long as my suitcase was not overweight, it didn't cost me anything because I was gonna be going home anyway for like a family visit, and I didn't have to pay to ship this stuff or to rebuy it or anything. So just keep that in mind in case that's something that works for you. Now, this whole process of moving to the UK actually taught me quite a big life lesson, and that is quite simply stuff doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I think most people know that. I think we can rationally understand that, yeah, clothes and items and just stuff around your house really doesn't matter. But when you move to a foreign country, I feel like it becomes so much more obvious. Yes, you need stuff to survive, and yes, you need stuff to be comfortable. But at the end of the day, all of the extra bits and all the extra items really don't matter. So if you are currently panicking over what to pack when you move to the UK, take a deep breath. As long as you have a couple of things thrown in your suitcase, really, you'll be just fine. If you are looking to work in the UK, make sure to check out this video where I talk about how to get a national insurance number. But until then, I'll see you in the next one.